What's up, everybody, man? Back, welcome to a brand new video, and today we are going to be doing another Godzilla Kong The New Empire news roundup. That's right, in this video we will be continuing our chronological journey through the release and development of Godzilla Kong The New Empire and its subsequent sequel by talking about events that happened in January 2024. In this one we're getting into a bunch of stuff I never really got into before, such as a detailed interview with Adam Wingard about what all the meaning of New Empire is and why a lot of the things that happen in the movie happen in the movie. So let's get into it. Starting out, I do want to show off some art like always, and this first piece comes to us from Kugat04. This is an updated version of the Godzilla Smash 3 poster, which was of course a mobile app released for Godzilla 2014. However, it has been updated with the Owen Kellen Godzilla 2014 model, which looks incredible. It looks so much like the original Godzilla. That is a truly wonderful sculpt, and I love the way that Kugat implemented it into the Godzilla Smash 3 poster, and not only did that, but also updated the color palette to make it look more like Godzilla 2014 as well. That was super cool. Kugat04 also released this evolved Godzilla face art. This is just awesome. I love it. I love Godzilla. I think he's looking sick here. This is super cool. I love artwork of evolved Godzilla. I think that is a design that is very cool in fan art. I think it always looks awesome. Same thing with this GNA artwork of evolved Godzilla standing on top of the cliff in Gibraltar about to dive off, looking amazing. GNA killing it as always, so I wanted to show that off. Getting into the news, starting out with some figures today, Haya revealed their Mothra 2019 Emerald version. This is a $51 figure, as most of these Haya figures are. It is the Mothra 2019 design. It's just looking incredible. I love it. I love the blue. It's obviously very similar to how she looks in the movie. I think they did a wonderful job with the fur texturing throughout the wings here. Unfortunately, I do not have this one, but it does look like an upgraded version of the NECA Mothra. It looks so cool. And I am always surprised at how whenever they do a figure like this, it always does look so similar to the NECA one while still making meaningful changes to it. I do wish though that the body of Mothra was maybe a different color, because Mothra's body does not change color along with her wings in the movie. New Empire theater cup toppers were revealed. There is a Godzilla, a Kong, and a Skar King cup topper, as well as a Godzilla cup that was revealed. These were theater exclusive. Now, while I never came across this Godzilla cup, I did come across the others at AMC. I think they were like expensive. They were like $20 to $30, right? But they're pretty sweet. This Skar King one is actually my favorite. It's also the easiest one for me to grab, so I just wanted to show it off. The cup toppers are awesome. They come off and they're like little minifigures, which look really cool as well. And then the cup itself is just sick. I do still on occasion run into some Godzilla merch being sold at AMC theaters. It's pretty cool. Playmates Wave 1 of Godzilla Kong The New Empire figures were released, so these were like Godzilla Evolved, Kong with the Beast Glove, Suko and Doug, Skar King and Shimo. It was all of the figures that I reviewed back in the day, and I have reviewed the entire Wave 1 of Playmates Godzilla Kong The New Empire line. They did do a really good job stepping up their game from their original Godzilla vs. Kong line, and especially their Toho Classics line, and they're still releasing figures today, which is awesome, and I'm still reviewing them with you guys. They are typically in the $10 price range, which is also really nice. The Jada Toys Godzilla RC figure officially hit shelves. This thing is awesome. It's got glowing spines, it's got an atomic breath feature, it is remote controlled, it stomps around, it swings its tail, it looks really cool. Tons of pictures of this thing were released, and it does look really awesome. I think it's one of the cooler toys of Evolved Godzilla. I just think it captures the design really well. It also adds some bulk to him, especially in the upper body, but it is super cool. I'm so happy this thing released. Now, when it did release, it was from $44.97 to $70, depending on where you found it. I saw it being sold online for about $100, and today I've seen it go as low as $24, but typically I do tend to find it in the $20 to $50 price range. SH MonsterArts revealed their Godzilla 2024 and their Kong 2024. This is not a new or a brave or a bold opinion here, but I really struggle to see the difference in the Godzilla between the Godzilla 2021 and the Godzilla 2024. I guess the way they've painted the spines is a little different from figure to figure, and they've given him the atomic breath beam that originally came with the 2019 Godzilla. They have changed the face a little bit to accommodate that, and they've also changed the face, I guess, to add some more depth, as well as maybe adjusting some areas to let him articulate a little better. But like overall, this thing looks almost identical to the 2021 one. And the Kong, it is such a missed opportunity. movie. It looks identical to their Kong 2021. I guess the paint job is maybe a little less brown, a little less saturated, a little more gray, and then they have painted on the scars from Godzilla vs. Kong. But if you have the Kong 2021, especially if you have the Kong 2021 Victory version, this is just not a figure worth getting. I guess they've also sort of changed the paint on the axe, but just not enough. Both of these ran for $57 upon release, but they have since increased in value. In January, the Japanese poster for New Empire was released, as well as the Chinese poster, which I think is fantastic. I love that Chinese poster a whole lot. Following this, the Japanese trailer for New Empire was released. This is the one that featured Godzilla in Rome at the end, which was a pretty cool thing to discover. That was exciting to see. And the Chinese trailer was released, which featured Kong doing his big epic beast glove roar at the end, which was a lot of fun. And then the MonsterVerse celebrated New Year's on their Chinese website with this little Godzilla Kong New Empire teaser. This led up to a giant Total Film magazine article breaking down Godzilla Kong the New Empire, giving lots of insights into it in the wake of the trailers releasing. This interview apparently took place immediately after the first trailer release, but there's a lot of juicy stuff in here, and I do want to cover it all. Starting out, Adam Wingard explained why Godzilla got a redesign in New Empire, and no, it's not because the story needed it, it's because he really wanted to do it, and he found a cool way to include that in the story. Adam Wingard says he wanted visual continuity with Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong, and so he kept Godzilla with the 2019 design so that it felt like the real Godzilla versus the real Kong, not Wingard's Godzilla versus Wingard's Kong, which is something I've talked a lot about in our Godzilla vs. Kong coverage, and I really appreciate that he did that. I think it did go a long way towards supporting that idea. He says now that he's done that, it was time. He wanted to make changes to the character and have a Godzilla design of his own. Not many people get to design their own Godzillas, so he wanted an opportunity to do so, and you cannot blame him for that. He says the big things were he wanted different spines, a different color, and he didn't want it to just be some random thing that happened between movies, so he included Godzilla's evolution into the story. As for Kong, he also updated Kong's design as well, giving him longer hair, a bigger beard, and graying his hair. I think Adam Wingard has talked a lot about how he kind of models Kong after himself, and so because he grew out the big beard and his hair's graying, I think he wanted Kong to do the same so that they kind of had this visual symmetry with the two of them. Although from what I've seen, it's not like Adam Wingard's hair is graying, I just think his beard is graying, but it actually looks pretty awesome. I dig that. I think it looks pretty sweet. One thing I hope that they don't do is kind of play into the idea that Kong's an old man though, which I'm glad they didn't really do in New Empire, because Kong in the MonsterVerse continuity is actually really young. If you were to track the age progression of the Kong species, they can live for hundreds of years, or in Skar King's case, thousands of years, and it seems that's just a thing the Kong species can do, and maybe they plateau at a certain point, or once they kind of hit an older age, they stop aging as fast. Maybe they really rapidly accelerate and then plateau. But it's really important to note that as far as the biological clock is concerned for Kong, the dude's actually only in his like early 30s in the MonsterVerse, if that. Kong might still be sort of kind of in his late 20s because he's in adolescent, like mid-teens in Kong Skull Island, so he really wouldn't be that old. He'd be like somewhere in his 20s, and that's even saying he has rapid aging at first and it kind of arcs out over time. I'm glad that Wingard moved away from talking about him like he was an old man in his 60s like he did with Godzilla vs. Kong. I'm glad we're over that. Wingard discussed Skar King himself, saying that Skar King is the closest thing we get to juxtaposing the human threat onto a titan. He says that for him, Skar King almost represents an upscaled version of the worst parts of humanity, just as Kong represents some of the best parts of humanity. I really like that contrast. I like that idea as well. I think that's a fantastic idea. I wish we could have seen more of that with Skar King. Skar King is one of my favorite antagonists in the MonsterVerse, and I think there was a lot more to do with him and a lot more to show and say with that character, so I'm a little bummed out with how things went with him. He says Skar King is said to be the greatest threat we've seen in these movies, and it's really going to take a full team together to bring it down because it's just too big for one titan. And I guess he's just talking about Skar King's army and Shimo overall, because we all know Skar King just truly was not that big of a threat, especially when compared to something like King Ghidorah. As for the full article, Skar King is called the most malevolent monster we've seen so far, which again, I just don't think that's true when you compare him to King Ghidorah, but I guess it's true as far as Kong opponents go. The VFX crew says they spent lots of time on Kong in this movie, especially Kong's eyes, in order to make them more detailed than they have ever been before. Because special effects are always advancing so quickly, this Kong features the highest quality model ever, and also a lot more close-ups than we're used to. They say it was an incredible challenge to make Kong expressive without either having him be in this uncanny valley or having him come across fake and exaggerated. They felt like they had this very fine line that they could walk. They spent lots of time making Kong's fur move in just the right ways and making it interact with the environment properly, specifically when he's with water. They also tried really hard to add a sense of scale to Kong with lots of shockwaves, dust, and trees reacting to his enormous size. Adam Wingard reveals that the first first shot he envisioned for this movie was the shot of Godzilla and Kong running side by side into action together, and the rest of the movie was written with the goal of building up to that specific shot. It's stated now by Wingard that the ending of Godzilla vs. Kong was about dominance, and Godzilla ends the film happy to have dominion over the surface world, and to live as its king. I'm really disappointed they move away from Godzilla being nature's balance and kind of turned him into a bit of a tyrant, but maybe that's something that they'll explore with more nuance in the future. It also kind of goes against what we were told at the end of Godzilla vs. Kong, especially in the novelization and interviews with Adam Wingard, which discussed this type of mutual respect Godzilla and Kong had developed for each other, and how in many ways Godzilla had learned more respect for Kong than Kong had learned for Godzilla, but they really have moved away from all of that. In fact, here, Wingard claims that the ending of Godzilla vs. Kong is really Godzilla just saying, "I'll let you go this time, but if I see you again, there's gonna be trouble," which I do think is a little less interesting. They tease that Kong explores the depths of Hollow Earth and learns that he's not the king after all. Of course, Skar King's there. I hope that Kong finally just sticks with the title King Kong in the MonsterVerse, because he does earn that title at the end of Kong Skull Island, Godzilla vs. Kong, and New Empire, so it's like, he's either King Kong or he's not. Just pick one, I guess. Wingard reveals that Trapper has one of his favorite intros of any of the characters he's ever written in his films, and that he would love a Trapper action figure as a kid, because that's just the type of character that's always one of his favorites. And yeah, Trapper's amazing. We love Trapper. Dan Stevens is in talk to return for the next movie, so that's very exciting. They say that while Apex isn't in this film, it's implied that Monarch absorbed its technology, and that the Beast Glove is somewhat related to Apex's technology being repurposed. I guess that's true, because we see that Monarch now has a bunch of heaves as well. Dan Stevens says he got to interact with a real massive prop. He doesn't say what of, but now we know it is of Kong's mouth and tooth for his introduction sequence. Rebecca Hall says she loved getting to work with Brian Tyree Henry and Dan Stevens, and reveals that she actually went to college with Dan Stevens, and some of the history of the characters in the film is their real-world history worked into the movie. Wingard says he's excited to go all over Hollow Earth and explore all the different environments and creatures in this film, and that he wanted the movie to have a big international feel, with lots of ground covered. While Godzilla vs. Kong was more of Wingard stepping into someone else's universe, this movie is a lot more of his creation alone. Wingard emphasizes his love for the late Showa era Godzilla films, and explains how much of an influence those movies had on this film. He says he loves the epic fun tone of those movies, and then says he worked a lot of Easter eggs for hardcore fans of that era into this film. He says he wanted the color palette of the movie to resemble the experience of being a kid in the 1980s walking down the toy aisle, surrounded by Thundercats, G.I. Joe, and Transformers figures. He says he wanted to create an over-the-top and heightened reality in this movie. They say they tried using as many real filming locations as possible for this movie, and to get the heave from location to location, they actually redesigned it from the last movie so that the physical prop of the ship could be broken apart into 14 pieces and rebuilt at different sets. That is fantastic problem solving, and I love it. And you can tell that the heave is a real physical prop they interact with. I really appreciate that. They say that the locations were actually very untamed, and that there were lots of wild and dangerous animals running around all the time. Sometimes threatening creatures like crocodiles would show up, and things would have to go on pause for a minute. Wingard says he feels like it should be a true honor to have your city destroyed by Godzilla, and so he picked the landmarks for Godzilla and Kong to destroy in this movie very carefully with that in mind. He says that the return to Rio at the end of the movie is because Hollow Earth is such an alien world that you needed to throw the Titans back into a city every now and again in order to add their sense of scale back and juxtapose them against our world so that it can reground the film every once in a while. To add as much believability to the cities as possible, they shot as much real-world location plates as they possibly could, flying to the locations, filming these moments, trying to capture the camera angles they would use later so that they could just implement Godzilla into the real footage of the cities in post. That's a very cool strategy, and I'm very glad they did that. The article frustratingly doubles down, and this is no one's fault but the article writer, it frustratingly doubles down on the idea that human stories in kaiju films do not matter at all, and then they make fun of the cast for also acknowledging this. Rebecca Hall initially tries to explain that Eileen has some real depth in this movie, but kind of gives up halfway through the answer and says she ultimately didn't take this role too seriously because she knows that the monster battle is the fun part. Dan Stevens basically echoes this, and I think that's really depressing. I hope in a post-Godzilla -1 world we learn that that's not true. The story is the most important part of any movie, and whether that story is being told with the humans or without them, it doesn't matter. The humans are still an integral part of a kaiju movie, and you shouldn't just write them off because they're not the big monsters. It's disappointing to hear people say that. So I'm excited to hear that in the new one it sounds like we're going to be working on that. The VFX supervisor for this movie says his goal was to deliver the best performances of the Titans that they have ever given, and I would say in many cases he pulls that off. Wingard explains that in many ways kaiju films aren't always about the human threat, and how humans are responsible for their own problems. He views Mechagodzilla as the pinnacle of that idea. What happens when you give give humanity too much power. That's why he found Skar King to be a really interesting character. Rather than being a human problem, or a problem related to humans, he is a titan who brings humanity-like baggage and evil to the table, creating an entirely new dynamic. I definitely think that's one of the reasons Skar King resonates so well with me. I think he's a fantastic antagonist. Finally, opening up about the nonverbal storytelling in this movie, it was said that they have large sequences, sometimes almost 8 minutes long in this movie, following the monsters without any humans in the mix, and that was a really challenging and exciting thing to do that. Wingard explains that he tried really hard to make it so that the monsters are so emotive that you're not sitting there wondering what the monsters are doing or thinking the entire time, you just simply understand them. And I think if there's anything else Wingard pulled off with New Empire, it is that right there. Wingard absolutely killed it with the nonverbal storytelling and took it to the next level in terms of what you can show the kaiju doing and let us, the audience, just interpret on our own without having someone yap over it explaining exactly what they're thinking. I love it. I kind of think in many ways that started with movies like Son of Godzilla, and we get to see that evolution today in the modern age. It's pretty cool. The Godzilla Kong Minecraft event was revealed. I'm not really going to get too much into it for now, but a teaser image was revealed of the Godzilla Minecraft model and the Kong Minecraft model, recreating the Godzilla vs. Kong epic beam battle. This is an official Minecraft Godzilla crossover, and it was a pretty big event, so we'll get into that in subsequent news and updates. And then finally, Godzilla Kong the New Empire moved its release date from May to March 29th, which is where it stuck to and where the movie released at. No real reason why they did that, but it actually worked out pretty well for the film. It was a good move. The movie did very well at the box office, and I don't know if it would have done better if it stayed at its original date, so that was the right call, I say. Well, thank you guys so much for tuning into another one of these. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to be moving through these. We're gonna catch up as fast as I can here. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for their support. It's through the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to continue to make videos like this for you. If you want to support the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. And if that's not your thing, please consider supporting the channel as a channel member. That'll do it for my greasiest haired episode of the Godzilla Kong news and updates, at least for a long time. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.